Hey folks, how's it going? Inazuma has been a real blast, and after completing it to 100%, it's time to wait for the 2.1. In the meantime, I want to do a bit of a self-account review to see which characters are in the most need for a gear update and if I can slot that grind in between the 2.1 pre-farm. So let's start with Lumine and make our way down the list. Sadly, she hasn't seen much play in a while. I think the last time I actually used her has been during the Abyss 11 floor where you had to protect the ley line. Her electro version looks like a pretty good energy battery and could work great for supporting Eula. Right now she's just holding on to a random TS set, but I'm not sure if I want to invest more books into her skill since her role is going to be taken over by Raiden. A second energy battery could still be useful for other characters or later on in Abyss, but for now she's going to sit on the bench a little while longer. For Ayaka, I might have seemed a bit hard, but it was honestly fascinating to see how high her damage skyrocketed between the level 80 out of 80 with a level 80 weapon and her fully upgraded version. She went from 16k damage per tick on her Q to 17.2k with the Amenoma to 18.1k with the Black Cliff at level 80. Uncapping the Black Cliff brought her to 19.2k damage per tick, and getting her up to level 90 got her up to 22.2k. After giving her her crown and food buffs, she let me see 28.7k damage per tick against the Mabu Kenki, in a team with no Kazuha and no C2 Klee. I'm pretty happy about how she turned out, even if there's still plenty of room for improvement. Her attack sits comfortably at 2k, but she could use more crit rate. 27% is a bit low. The Blitzer Strayer and the Cryo Resonance help a lot in that regard, but I would still prefer if she could get around 35% base. The 252% crit damage is pretty awesome though. Still, she needs a lot more energy recharge as well. As far as artifact quality goes, her flower is okay, decent crit value, good attack, some ER that never hurts. Its only alternatives would be a piece with 33% crit damage, a large stats loss in exchange for more ER, or stripping a piece from Ganyu. But if we've got to talk about stripping Ganyu, that's not the way I want to go about it. Her plume could use an upgrade. Low crit rolls and 2 upgrades to HP aren't exactly ideal, but the only better piece is, again, in Ganyu's hands. The sands are honestly pretty great. Even if they only bring crit, it's still a 32 total crit value and they're likely going to stay there for a very long time. Her goblet isn't actually hers, that's the one piece she managed to snatch from Ganyu. And while it does have some wasted stats, it's still the only cryo goblet with crit damage that I have. It's nothing spectacular, but it has the bare minimum stats I'm willing to settle for. Lastly, her crown is the only decent crit damage crown I've ever gotten, which says a lot. This one is likely going to Noelle if I ever decide to fix her gear. Embers had some potential, but then rolled everything into defense. Khalees doesn't even have a crit sub. Xinyan's is on her due to the defense, and Zhongling's bringing mastery and recharge, which she really needs. After Ganyu's and its little attack and EM subs, they're over. I've been playing since release and I've gotten a single crit damage piece that's barely acceptable and 6 more which are pure copium. The rarity of these things never ceases to amaze me. The others are crit rate main stats with some crit damage sub, which I wouldn't really put on Ayaka since if I did, every other piece would need to be crit damage only. Or would I? She ends up with 1.8k attack, 42% crit rate, 240% crit damage and 122% energy recharge, but it comes with a 2k damage loss per tick. On the other side, the higher crit rate makes her damage a bit more stable and herself a bit more flexible since she won't need to rely on the cryo resonance or the freeze. The extra energy recharge can help in case she needs to do 2 rotations in Abyss or during events. Getting upgrades for her gear in this situation though means needing to go above 24% crit damage and 10% energy recharge in these subs, which is going to be real hard to see. Still, she's doing more than fine already, and we can move on to Eula. Possibly the least free-to-play friendly character on my sorta free-to-play account, I still don't know which saint put their hands on my shoulders and make me get her C1 in 40 pulls, but I'm really glad they did. Her stats are fairly balanced so far, with a 60 and 120 crit ratio and a healthy 145% energy recharge. The fact for which I didn't feel like I needed to get her to Ascension 6 mostly relies on her Wolf's Gravestone. The Star Silver has been okay for a while, but it's still a substantial upgrade. Due to the weapon, I think she won't be needing the attack buff from the full Pale Flame set, and she's going to work better on a 2-piece Bloodstain and 2-piece Pale Flame instead. Sadly, I don't really have the artifacts to make that work. I'm only sitting on a single plume that might work well on her, and even her Pale Flame set still needs quite a lot of work. She's using an off-piece flower with higher energy recharge, an okay plume despite the Elemental Mastery, and she's bringing along that Elemental Mastery course on both her Sands and Goblet. Her mask is something that I likely won't change for a while. Despite the low value rolls, it's still kind of balanced. So I'm going to chuck a minimum of 2 Bloodstained Chivalry pieces to the list of artifacts to grind. Ganyu is the sole reason why I farmed as much Blitzstrayer as I did, and both Ayaka and Kaya have her to thank for her enemy downs. Her stats are currently a little bit skewed due to the lack of a decent crit damage goblet, and that's going to be the first piece with the highest priority to farm for. Still, it can be an offset piece, so it doesn't matter which domain it comes out of, as long as it has some crit damage, ER, and maybe an Elemental Mastery sub. For her weapon, it took me 9 months to see my first bow billet, and the others came from the tradable chest and Inazuma. It would be really funny if I were to suffer to get this thing to R5, and then the standard banner would immediately drop an Amos, right? As for the rest of her gear, she should be fairly set. Her flower is almost perfect with a 41 crit value and 2 more desirable substats. Her plume is still approaching 30 and carries the little energy recharge she needs. Her Sands is an onset one with another 32 crit value, and her Circlet fills in some more attack and EM. This is probably her worst piece, but it's also the only crit damage Circlet I've ever gotten out of that domain in 2 months of grinding. She is also the next character I want to bring up to Ascension 6, and I want to crown her normal attack. She's more than deserved it. With Ayaka's release, Mona has begun seeing more use, mostly as a buff support and as an energy battery. Right now she's got 180% energy recharge and is holding on to a Favonius Codex. For her artifacts, she's carrying a 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece Art of Depth with some standard DPS stats and added energy recharge, but I've been considering going either full Noblesse for the extra attack buff, or maybe give her the new Severed Fate set, since it will allow her to double dip on her energy recharge to gain both a way higher burst damage than the Noblesse, as well as added hydro damage bonus. Coming in with 20% energy recharge at 2-piece and an elemental burst damage bonus of 25% the character's own ER, it's going to bring a 30% damage boost with no extra ER subs already, while it does need 300% energy recharge to cap at the 75% burst damage bonus. 140% is already going to be enough to match her current gear. I would need to start farming this set from scratch though, but it looks like it's going to be okay for Raiden as well. Next up is Klee, and after getting used to her small stature, I've got to admit that she became pretty fun to play with, even if I can't do animation cancelling for her machine gun. That's wise, 1.8k attack is okay for level 80, she could use a bit more crit rate, but both her crit damage and energy recharge are pretty decent values already. Weapon wise, I can't seem to be able to drop a Witsit, so she'll be using a Solar Pearl until that happens. It's still a pretty nice boost to damage. Artifacts wise, it's 2-piece Crimson Witch and 2-piece Gladiator. She applies so much pyro, she only redoes reaction on the Hypostasis bosses, so there's no point in going for a full set. Quality wise, some of these are pretty good as well. She's carrying my highest crit value flower, clocking in at almost 46%, an OK plume with good ER, and a close to 40% crit value Sands, ruined by a single rolling defense. Her goblet should also be the first piece to go, but it's hard to replace an on-set one, and my only other option is on Ember, and it's not that good either. It had some potential, but defense percent has to ruin everything as usual. Lastly, her crit damage Gladiator could see an improvement, but again, these things are really rare. On the bright side, the attack percent substat is now on the Shimenawa set as well, and farming it is going to be a lot cheaper compared to the Gladiators. Replacing her first piece is going to be close to impossible, and it looks like I'll need to farm a few more Crimson Witch pieces as well. Noelle has been gathering a bit of dust on the bench for a while now. She's got a neat 1.7k defense and slightly above the bare minimum crit rate and damage. Her ER is quite fine as well. Her white blind has been waiting for a refinement for a bit too. I wanted to figure out if the new Inazuma weapons would be good to craft before I use my billets. She is one of my few C6 characters and of course I leveled up her skills as much as I could. She is my main shield user after all. Artifacts wise, she's currently on a full retracing bowlight and it's been working okay so far. If I keep getting good defense percent gladiators, I will likely swap it then. Her flower could make its way onto another DPS as an off-piece. Her plume is pretty much made for her, while the sands could use an upgrade to a better defense percent main stat one. For her goblet, it's hard to ask for more. When you get close to 40% crit value, you start caring a bit less about what the other subs are. Her circlet though has got to be changed. The only reason why this is still here is because I haven't farmed that domain in months. Ningguang, sadly, I don't use all that much, even if I don't think that she's that badly off stats wise. Her low attack can be sort of fixed with buffs and she's got more than a decent enough crit rate and crit damage values. In terms of energy recharge, she doesn't need much, even if I would want at least another 10% on her. For her weapon, it's another Solar Pearl. It looks good. While pulling for Ayaka, I managed to get her up to C6, increasing her burst damage even further. And for that alone, I would love to fix her up a bit and get some use out of her. For her artifacts, she's got a 2-piece Petra and a 2-piece Gladiator, and these aren't too bad. 38 crit value flower, even if it has no more good subs. Okay-ish plume that rolled in both crit damage and ER. Okay-ish sands even though it only has crit rate. Another pretty good geo damage goblet, and to close it off, a piece that should really go on Noelle instead. Sucrose I mostly use for the Viridescent Veneerer. She's got up to 540 elemental mastery and an okay 140% ER. Sadly, she still sees 0. After the buffs to elemental mastery, I've been thinking I want her on a triple elemental mastery main stat, but those pieces are hard to come by and she already does her job fine. Unless they release another cute animo support, I don't think I'll be going back to the Veneerer and Maiden domain. And speaking of Maidens Beloved, I've been putting the ones I got with some energy recharge and HP on Diona, and one morning I woke up to find her at level 80. I wasn't really planning on building her, I was thinking maybe as a support for Eula to help her proc superconduct, but she ended up with 232% ER, and even at level 4, her burst heals for over 3k HP per tick. Sadly, she's only Constellation 1, but Constellations for 4 stars will come eventually. Let's pray Raiden's Banner has another good couple of 4 stars too. Aya is currently holding on to some third-hand Blizzard Strayers, but I've only really used him a couple of times in a beast for his Q. I'm in no real hurry to fix his gear. Tishel I've swapped to an EM set for the past event with the buffed Hydro boss and she did quite okay. I think I want to wait for her to get up to C6 before getting her back to her usual attack set, but with both Raiden and Sarah on the horizon, I'm not sure how likely that is to happen. Next up, Beidou. I've been having a lot of fun playing with her, and even after the new Electro arrivals, she will still have the unique parry and the Electro shield, so she might avoid the bench for a little while longer. Like Mona, she's on a 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece elemental damage, and again, the new Severed Fate set can blow those stats out of the water for her off-field Electro hits. Weapon-wise, I've been swapping around between Prototype Archaic and Sacrificial, but the second one might end up being better for the new set. Either that, or the Serpent Spine. Lisa is currently naked, she could get some use after her C4 when her Q becomes sort of AoE, but basic 4 stars are a bit too rare to get. Barbara is carrying a 3 Tazel Dragon Slayers and ER and HP Noblesse set. She's doing her job fine even on level 4 talent still. Xinyan was just a placeholder for the Lava Walker pieces I got while farming for Klee and Zhangling, and eventually she got herself brought up to level 80. She ended up with somewhat okay stats, but I haven't really used her outside of the Endless Tides event. She's one of the few characters who can get a little use out of that defense substat, which rolls always too often, but she's a bit underwhelming to use. Bennett is another character I might want to bring up to level 90, if only for the higher base attack. Stats wise, all I care about on him is energy recharge, and he's got 200% of it on a Noblesse set. I might consider swapping him to a full Crimson Witch set for better melt damage if I ever decide to go far more and the subs match what he'll need. Zhangling I haven't really touched since I built her. Stats wise, she is mostly fine even though she's on a bit of a weird set. Since I wanted to use her as a main carry for a free-to-play only meme, she ended up with 2-piece Bloodstain and 2-piece Crimson Witch. Still, the Bloodstained come in with good crit values, high elemental mastery on one and high recharge on the other, which are pretty good on her. I don't really use the physical damage bonus from this set anymore, but I'm afraid this will be a bit hard to replace. Her Sands came out okay with 70 elemental mastery, and her Goblet is still stuck on an attack one. Those subs are pretty decent though. Her Circlet also comes in with more elemental mastery and energy recharge, so despite everything, her Pyro Needle damage is still quite okay. I would like to fix her and move her to a full Crimson Witch, but I don't really want to build Jinshu and I don't have Child to vaporize all her hits. I probably won't be pulling for Kokomi either, and sadly Ganyu, Ayaka and Kaya aren't enough to make her melt everything. Mona still works though, but Mona is more often on Ayaka's team. Ember is currently holding on to the only decent Wanderer true pieces I've gotten, but they are all pretty bad still. Diluc I don't really like, Yanfei looks good but I already have Klee and I'm not really interested in building any of the last 3 boys. Maybe I might build Jinshu if I swap Beidou and Mona out of their noblest pieces, but he's also going to have to wait until after Raiden, Sarah and Yae come out. In terms of gear to farm, it looks like I'm going to need between 10 and 15 decent Severed Fate pieces, 2 to 3 good Bloodstained Chivalry ones, 2 to 3 Pale Flame ones, and after them I can go grab myself a few more Crimson Witch. Right then, the grind is on. That's going to be it for me for the moment. As always, thanks a lot for watching, let me know if you've got any suggestions for the character builds, and see you soon. Ciao!